Alright, everybody, welcome back to the Cold of Larry Draft League. I'm Dr. Geo. With me is...
P McGee.
we have a very special video. We're going to continue on our Legends of Draft series. Before that, we're going to get into our plugs, so if you like this video, give it a like, give it a subscribe, all that, leave a comment. Anywho, our season is going to start very shortly. As of when this video is going to be posted, February 22nd, you still have 3 days left to apply, so get those applications in, and we really hope to see you there. We'll have a link to our Discord in the description of this video. Come hang out. It's a great place to be, and we're having lots of fun, and we're going to be coming out with lots of cool content all throughout the season.
Yeah.
Anything else
If
you want to add?
you are just if you were just curious to see what the new Pokemon Legends Arceus Pokemon do in draft, this is a really a good place to come and check that out. We are going to be utilizing them. It's not necessarily going to be the format everyone is most accustomed to, but we are going to be using them, and I think there is going to be a lot of interest and intrigue in seeing how they perform in draft. So if you're just wanting to see them and see where they're tiered, see how they look, even if you're not sure about applying for this season, I definitely recommend coming and checking it out. I think our tiering for them is pretty solid, and I think we have some really great coaches that are going to get to showcase them off really early in the draft careers. So come hop in, if nothing else, to be a lurker for a little bit, because I think you'll have a lot of fun doing that.
All right, having said all that, let's get in. Today, we're going to be talking about the most absolute best dragon in draft. You can see it there in the shadow. It's obviously Drudd the MFing Stud.
From above.
From above. They look just like each other. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Druddigon today, and let's get into him proper. Here's Drudd the Stud. This is one of my favorite Pokemon to use in draft. He usually sits around 7 or 8 points. Sometimes you'll see him a little higher. I've never seen him below 7.
I haven't either.
Usually
never
around
below 7,
8.
never higher than 9.
Yeah, usually around
somewhere between
8.
9 and 7. Yep.
This is for Nat Dex format as well. Let's take a look at what makes him so good. He has a pretty good HP stat, decent defense and SPDF, attack of 120. Who cares about special attack, and speed is pretty sad too. But when you're slow, you can be tanky, and that's kind of where his abilities come in. His main ability is Rough Skin, and that really enables him to be a physical wall and an anti-momentum mon, meaning he really punishes all those U-turning that goes around, and to a certain extent the flip turns as well, and even the volt switch. Like, yeah, you're not stopping it as a ground type mon, but you do resist it. Having said that, his other two abilities are not useless either. Sheer Force means he can hit like a truck, especially with that 120 attack, and we'll take a look at his move pool here in a minute. But Mold Breaker, as a wall breaker, it's really good too. Like, these levitate mons, they can't come in on earthquake, so Rotoms are unhappy about it. You have a lot
There's
of...
another...
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's another value to Mold Breaker as well, and I think it came into play for us when we fought a while back, is that it denies magic bounce.
Yes.
Which is really, really critical. It's both setting at hazards with Stealth Rocks as well as glaring, where you don't have to worry about running into that issue because he can just Mold Breaker through that and do it anyway. So there is utility in that ability. Outside of just being offensive, it can enable him to do some things he might run into issues otherwise with. Something like Mega Sableye that might prevent you from setting hazards otherwise, he can just disregard.
Yes. So you have a lot of finesse in how you can play around these abilities, but so that kind of leads him into these different compositions where he's going to be a physical wall probably most of the time, specifically as an anti-momentum mon. He's a good source to set your rocks. He's a great glare bot. He's one of like 3 Pokemon that reliably use the move Glare, which is, in my opinion, the best status move in the game. And he's a pretty decent wall breaker. He has some niches, a phaser, and like a... he's got momentum with Sucker Punch, but you're not fitting him on the team as that. Maybe as a phaser. If it's like a Rillaboom, you can always roar it out, but usually you'll just go for the kill anyway, and we'll show you how.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at some specifically what his move pool is and what he can get. It's funny that in this GIF here, he's using like flamethrower or something, and you're never gonna use that. So normally we'd look at the critical moves first, but here it's probably better to look at the items, and this will kind of tell you what Drudd's gonna be. He's gonna use Rocky Helmet, Leftovers, and sometimes Life Orb. Yes, Rocky Helmet's on there twice, but that's because that's what you're gonna run. You're gonna do Rocky Helmet, Rough Skin, like 80% of the time, if not more.
And it's going to work very effectively 80% of the time.
Yeah. So to go with that, you'll switch in. Let's say you're up against Victini. You switch in on a banded Victini. Do you take 40% damage? He takes 40% damage. We're all happy with that. But it also gives you a chance then that you can set up Stealth Rocks. You can go for a Glare. You have 2 phasing options in Roar and Dragon Tail. You have the move Endure, which when you click it, it lets you take a hit and survive with 1 HP. So it can always help guarantee another set of Rocky Helmet, Rough Skin proc. He's got a lot of breaking moves in Gunk Shot, Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, Earthquake, Iron Head, Taunt. He's got the normal dragon moves of like Scale Shot, Dragon Claw, Outrage, but
you're not clicking Dragon moves very often.
No.
As a phasing option, you might click Dragon Tail.
Dragon Tail is pretty reliable damage if you don't have to worry about phasing through a sub or a fairy.
Yeah. If you're basically just trying to force a lot of hazard damage because you put the rocks up and their fairy, for whatever reason, isn't good to come that week or is scared of your Drudagon because of Gunk Shot, then you can pretty much spam Dragon Tail, and RNG can really play in your favor where you can decimate with that. I've seen it be very effective as a move. It's not always easy to slot into the game plan just because most teams usually have good fairy switch-ins for it, but if it's not there, he really shines.
No, and that's exactly it. It's just a nice phasing move that is going to do like 25% reliably to most mons. Maybe not a steel type mon, but if early in the season you show yourself to use Drudd and maybe a little more offensive, they're going to be a little scared to switch in on Drudd, and that's one of the big values. Like, you look at this move pool, you look at the stats. If you're not afraid to run the Sheer Force variant, people should be afraid to switch in on Drudd. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be the Life Orb Sheer Force. You can even fake it out with like a lefty set. They should never be switching in for free. You always have options. Like your normal set's going to be something along the lines of Stealth Rock, Glare, Sucker Punch, Coverage Move. You have lots of options to play around. Yeah. You can drop rocks for another move like Endure or Roar, or even Toxic. You're probably not running Toxic and Glare because it's, you pick a lane.
It's unlikely.
But you never know. So you have options.
Earthquake really slots in well on Drudagon just as a coverage move, because the one thing that might want to try to switch in on him is a electric type to avoid the glare spam. And so having that earthquake coverage can be really good for a lot of electrics, because not a lot of electrics are very bulky. So that, obviously something like Zapdos doesn't care, but a lot of other electric types that aren't Zapdos or Rotom aren't having a good time with the earthquake's glare.
Exactly.
And actually you can disregard the Rotoms too, because again, you have Mold Breaker, so you could actually
run Mold Breaker
earthquake
that week,
on a Rotom switch in.
And the thing too is, even Zapdos has to be wary of Gunk Shot spam. Like, if you're not running Sheer Force and it hits, that's a 30% chance to 10%. I don't know. You still have to worry.
30%.
30% chance to poison, and he does not like being poisoned. That's a lot of chip just passively every turn. So yeah, you just have to be wary when switching in. It's tough. So your two biggest coverage moves, in my opinion, are Earthquake and Gunk Shot. Just kind of hits anything that wants to come in on Drudd. And depending on the matchup, you'll have a pretty good idea of what's going to come in against Drudd, so you can get some plays in there. So
exactly.
Having said that, we're going to jump into some of these replays here. So we have picked out a series of 4 battles for you today. And we're gonna actually just jump ahead here to move 34. This is where we have a combination of Endure, Rocky Helmet, and Sucker Punch, and this is going to ensure that this Gallade can't get through Druddigon. Because you would think here, Drudd's at 59%. Ain't nothing gonna stop me now. So let's kind of get into it. So we see a Sucker Punch
here is really good. And this is against me in case you guys are looking. So I'm about to get destroyed by this Druddigon set that I'm feeling really good about. Because I'm like, I'm going to eat this chip. I'm going to eat this Glare. And then I think I can win with Crobat. But then he does that.
And the Endure is just too much. Because now the Sucker Punch can KO. So if Crobat wants to do any damage, it has to take the double chip as well, and it can't take 2 hits. So there it is. Druddigon picks up 3 KOs for the match in absolute stunning fashion. So if you're not prepared for the Endure, this chip from the Rocky Helmet and the Rough Skin adds up so quickly. You're going to see it more along the lines of you switch it in on like a Lando T or anything spamming U-turn. You'll switch it in on that, and think about it, that's almost 40% damage just for switching in, and usually you're not taking too much damage.
Yeah, it's painful. It really breaks you down in a quick fashion, and that Endure is really helpful tech, because there are things that can reliably two-hit KO Drudd, but if they have to make contact to do it, it turns into a 3-hit KO because you hit Endure, and so they end up eating like 80% chip, and then if you have Sucker Punch like he does, it can get that last 20%, so they can't even net the KO, and you survive a 1%. It's nasty. It's a very, very effective combination. I've tried running it, since Fact destroyed me with it, and have not been successful yet, but it's really, really potent if you can find the right matchups for it, and Mega Glade is definitely one of those matchups.
Because, what are you going to do? Ice Punch is what you want to run. Don't fall into the triple axle trap. I think anyone who's run a mon that uses it, usually Gallade or Lopunny, you've all hit the Rocky Helmet mon with it, and it's not good. Alright, next we have a match between the Thundurus Down Underus and Shark Finnegan. This one just kind of starts off right away. It's a little different, so let's just hop into it. Here we have the Druddigon lead up against the Thundurus. So we got a Gunk Shot, and look at that. Look at that. That's a pretty tanky mon to pinch her in, Gary. So this was Life Orb. So even without the Life Orb, it's still 76% damage. This thing's a menace. We got some rocks up, and really that's its contribution there.
It broke Pincurchin, it broke Scizor, it still put up Stealth Rocks. So in 3 turns, he broke 2 defensively leaning mons beyond recovery while ensuring hazards were up for the game. So as good of a start as you can ask for something like Druddigon to do.
And for the rest of this game, it's really just kind of a slow play, because you can look. I don't think Greedon has Wish or anything, right? No, so there's no Wish support on this team, so damage that you've put on is pretty final. I mean, you Roost, I guess, on Scizor, but that's kind of scary. Like if you Roost as Chandeler's coming in,
there's no good Roost window left. I mean, you look at this team. There's nothing to Roost on. What's it get a Roost on that it can take a hit from?
And it was left with 20. It was left with 32% HP, and rocks are up. So
or even Rillaboom, who doesn't necessarily match up well against Scizor, and that's what this really enabled right off the bat, is he broke the best Scizor answer almost immediately, or the best Rillaboom answer almost immediately, which was the Scizor. So now his Rillaboom is enabled for later in this game to just basically spam Grassy Glide without a safe switch in, and he's done that in 3 turns. So that is a really clean way to secure an early win condition.
Yeah, so this mon is scary. You have to be careful with how you switch into it. Next, we've got a matchup here between our own Liger and Fortress Fiesta. I'm not sure who that is. This is a kind of like mixture set here. It's a pretty Spadef focused one, but it's just Drudd pressuring a whole team. So we're going to skip ahead a few turns here. So Drudd's on the field. It switched into a knockoff and it lost its leftovers. So it's not Life Orb Sheer Force, but it is still Sheer Force. So Aromatisse switches in. Got some rocks up. Just go for the gunk shot. Look at that. Look at that. You can't wish through that.
It cannot wish stall that one out.
Rock slide, looking for the predict. That's fine. The swamp comes in. The gunk shot misses, but
Tease is still in here.
yeah.
So
he comes back. He comes back
Tease.
in a few turns here. So we're gonna speed it up till Drudd makes his appearance.
So gunk shot's a really valuable move for Druddigon to have access to because a lot of fairies that are threats in the meta aren't fast. You know, we're talking Sylveon's a 60, Clefable's a 60, Aromatisse is like a 29.
They're not running speed.
Yeah, they're not running speed most of the time, and you have a 48, which isn't great, mind you, but it's creepable. If you want to creep and hit those with gunk shot first, it's all doable. And so he can pressure really, really hard with that move, and none of the fairies are well suited to handle gunk shot spam.
Yeah, so like he's back in, and it's Mega Swampert. I mean, still 19 damage, like for a resisted move. I think it gets off one more pot shot here before it goes down. Yeah.
And this Aromatisse isn't getting health back through Protect spam because it got burnt, so it's just making it eat all this chip to come in, and
now there's no more wishes.
And Rain without wish support is on a timer, like a very particular timer. And I'm imagining this Druddigon also had Thunder Punch, which it unfortunately didn't hit right there. Because that could have removed the Pelipper, and
then Rain's gone for the rest. But, I mean, still getting through, like, if you look at this team here on the right, that Aromatisse is, along with the Alolan Muck, are the two defensive pivots that, like, are anchoring the team down. So you've gotten rid of one of them, and any damage Muck takes, especially when wish support's gone, is permanent damage.
Yep, and you get the rock, so it's a free 12% every time it comes in, plus whatever chip it eats. So it only ends up with like 2 or 3 more switch-ins.
And those were rocks.
But it could have been
Drudd set himself. Absolutely incredible. All right, we got the last replay. This is again from our own Fact Luigi. This is to highlight the specifics of the Victini versus Druddigon matchup. Because if there's one thing you should know if you stick around and draft long enough, Banded Victini is a menace. Nothing really switches into V-Create. Well, almost nothing. Oops, music is still on. So we're gonna go fast. Obviously, you switch out the Drudd there. No good. I don't remember what turn this one is. But yeah, okay. So here it is. Look at that, 44% from the Banded V-Create. It's just no good.
Then you get your rocks up, and that's Banded V-Create. So again, those rocks are going to shut down the momentum for the Victini if he's able to keep those on the board, so Victini can't switch in on those.
And Drudd does a fair amount against the Zero Aura as well.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we're back to full. This is the importance of a cleric. And I don't think there's anything too much more important here that happens.
I mean, the big thing here is that Victini outside of Druddigon just happily spams V-Create, and it can't. And this team has no wish support, so Victini really can't even touch the field because there's no point.
Yeah.
There's nothing for this Victini to do on the field right now because it's just going to lose 30% more from attacking. So even though Drudd isn't on the field actively doing something, he is denying his opponent's best piece of offensive pressure and just shutting it down.
You have an 8-point mon completely removing the game of a 16 or 17-point mon. And it essentially lets you play 5-on-6 because you still have this impact because you're getting rocks up when it's in, and then that forces this Rotom to waste a turn on defog, and when it has to defog, then you're getting something like the Mamo in for free, or the Aroma, or the Florges in for free. It's not actually free. That's you're wasting a tempo by clicking defog. You need it gone, because then the low health on the Victini is going to be even lower, and your Sneasel, so like rocks are bad. But
yeah, I mean, it just turns what could be liabilities on Fac's team into nothing of concern, because the issue with bringing Scizor to a matchup against a Victini is that if any sort of momentum move hits Scizor as it hits the field, that's a free window for Victini to click Banded V, create, and something's in trouble normally. Or the same thing with Aromatisse, who can't pressure Victini at all. These are mons that just baited in under normal circumstances, and they're entirely not causing Fac any sort of issues in his gameplay because Victini can't touch the field. It can't do anything. So he's free to bring in Florges and hit Wish whenever he wants. He's free to bring in Scizor basically whenever he wants and generate U-turn momentum. So he can dictate the flow of this game because he doesn't have to worry about exposing himself to dangerous situations with a Victini. No forced sacks, like how it can be with Dracovish sometimes, where if Dracovish gets on the field in front of something, that's just a KO you have to give up.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's not the case here. Thanks to Druddigon, it denies that.
At a minimum, you're going to be trading it 1-for-1 to the point where it can't do anything on the field anymore. At least not with this current 6v6. If they bring their own Wish support, things are a little different, but then you play it a little bit differently too.
And it's basically the same situation with the Zeraora, who is not even hitting the field in this match, who is under the same amount of pressure, it looks like, where it doesn't have freedom to click moves because it has to deal with a Druddigon
Plasma Fists, Plasma Fists don't do all that much damage, turns out. And even then, if it's running Sucker Punch, that's probably going to do 30 to 40. It's a pretty frail mon, so you're very limited to what you can do. And like, this is all from an 8-point mon. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, it is a budget dragon, and I think dollar for dollar, like, this is just my personal opinion, dollar for dollar, it's maybe the most value dragon in draft. There are technically
You will never
better.
be criticized for drafting Druddigon because it qualifies as a good dragon. It's, in the sports world, we maybe call this like the Dalton line, the Drudd line. Any dragon above Drudd is probably a pretty solid dragon. If you have to draft below Drudd, you're probably not drafting a good dragon. Maybe Trampa is an exception, but otherwise you're not drafting a good dragon.
No,
Drudd is just that really safe pick where it's like, it's not going to come to every game. Everyone knows that, but it's not going to be a bad dragon for you. It's going to fulfill its job in the season for what you need it to do.
We were even talking about that too. Like, the only dragon that's like good below it is Drampa, and even then, Drampa's more of like a normal type mon that happens to have dragon typing. Like, there are better dragons. Like, I can't make a real argument that like Drudd is somehow better than Garchomp, It's not. Like, the one thing it has going for it over Garchomp is that like it resists water. But like, Garchomp's like, well, I'll just win games. Drudd stops the other team from winning, which is very valuable in 8-point mon. But he may struggle to just win games outright. Even though we just saw it in one of these replays, but
I mean, ultimately, Drudd is a type of discount pick that is really problematic to a lot of very common top-tier picks. So, like, Mega Lopunny doesn't like 1v1ing the Drudd. Mega Glade, as we saw with my replay, does not have a good time with the Drudd.
Zeraora does not like the
runs into
Drudd.
the same problems. Zeraora has the same amount of problems. Dracopult doesn't even like 1v1ing it that much because it has to deal with Sucker Punch, and it often would force Dracopult into some, Dracopult doesn't get U-turn momentum in a matchup like this because it can't just freely click U-turn. So Drudd puts a lot of pressure. Victini, we just saw, So
Yeah.
it pressures a lot of relevant top tier mons and makes it difficult for them to freely click buttons. And if that team doesn't have wish support, and a couple of these replays didn't have team members with wish support, it just starts eating damage off of the win cons on the other team. And if those pieces go down, then Drudd's accomplished its job by removing the biggest threat and enabling your other pieces to win. So that's really where I think it shines, and why it has value in draft is because its ability to handle some of the top tier threats.
Absolutely. And I mean, we did Larry a few weeks ago, and it's the same thing. Where does it really gain its value? And it gains its value in trading as this low point mon versus these really high point mons. And I think you're gonna see that as a theme for a lot of these Pokemon that we pick for this Legend of Draft series. Is that yes, they're 8 points or below, but cool, they're beating these like 15 point and above mons, and it's like that feels really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there is Victini sets that can get past the Drudd, like you can spam Psychic or even Icy Wind, but that just doesn't feel as good as spamming V-Create. So you gotta be careful.
Well, yeah, and then the one time we saw it with the Victini in the matchup, the team also had a Florges as a specially defensive piece. So Victini is not breaking that on the special defense front, which basically forces, banded Victini if it wants to be a breaker, and that's not pushing through this Drudd. And so it's just a really good way to ensure some breakers can't break, and that's how you win games sometimes.
Exactly. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up here because we're getting close to that 30-minute mark, and I don't really want to go over. But I want to thank you all who've stayed with us this long. Once again, we are starting our draft in about a week's time, a little less. So stick around in the Discord for coach reveals coming up next Sunday. Or if you're watching this even later, then just stick around and see who made it. Once again, thanks everyone for watching. I'm Dr. Geo. With me is
P McGee.
and we'll catch you all later. Peace.